Hi, so we're going to get started. Hello to everyone that came out on this beautiful Wednesday night. My name is Heather Hamilton. I am on the select board for the town of Brookline. Arguably, I am to blame for this pilot program. So I am delighted that it has generated as much interest as it has. I frequently respond to emails about this topic. So just a brief background about the pilot program. We started the pilot on April 1st of this year. It will go until November 15th. We have been collecting lots of data points, including ridership, average trip length, average trip time. We are going to embark on an ambitious user survey starting tomorrow, and it will also be a survey for non-users. To try to assess the impact that it has had on numerous populations that are unable to use this kind of technology, so that we can better understand whether or not this technology is right for Brookline long term. So I will open it up to the people that want to speak on this topic, because that's really why we're here tonight. So I will start with the first speaker. I will set some ground rules. You will have about 4 minutes. I will be setting a timer. At 3 minutes, you will get the polite 1 minute left. And then at 4 minutes, I will do a please conclude. I will cut you off. I will try to be polite about it. And please, just one time at the mic until everyone has had a chance to speak. So those are the ground rules. So let's get started.
Heather, should we introduce ourselves just so
absolutely.
Folks know who we are? So I'm Chris Dempsey. I'm the chair of the Brookline Transportation Board, which is a volunteer board appointed by the Select Board, and we're responsible for regulating the public way.
Todd Corain, Transportation Administrator for the town of Brookline, and I'm the second person with Heather who's to blame for this trial. I would also just like to point out that we do have representatives in the room from Bird, Lime, and Spin.
Good evening. My name is Sergeant John Canny from the Traffic Division of the Brookline Police Department.
Great, and we're very interested in all thoughts and feedback to try to improve the program should it be considered for a more permanent status. So let's get started. Christopher Lucy is the first one.
My name is Christopher Lucy. I'm not a resident of Brookline, but one of Boston, and I would like to register strong support for the program. I rode several times this summer. I would ride more often, except I'm partly constrained by the fact that my trips begin and end in Boston, which is a city that has not authorized the use of these vehicles. I always ride on the street. I always use a helmet. I wouldn't think of going without one. I would probably use a full-scale motorcycle helmet, which I bought a new one for, a real superbike helmet, but I generally ride with a bicycle helmet because it's a little less bulky and easier to carry. I can see the benefits of these vehicles for extending my range to walk, which I walk quite a bit around the city, and fighting congestion. I can see intermodality possibilities. They're folders and they're allowed on the T and commuter rail or, streetcar and subway lines. It would be very useful for me, and more so if other cities in the vicinity, Cambridge, Boston, etc., would homologate and would actually, rationalize all of the rules and accept these vehicles for use on the roadway. I appreciate your time, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
And e-bicycles too, which you guys don't have. I would love to see that here as well. Even if you don't do scooters, do e-bikes.
Thank you for that feedback. Next person is Christopher Cabral. No? Adele Pike. And Sam Burgess is after that.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Adele Pike. I am a resident of Brookline. I live in Coolidge Corner. I am a walker. I am a pedestrian, and while I can't comment about riding a scooter with a helmet, without a helmet, because I don't ride scooters, but I do use the sidewalks. And I have on multiple occasions emailed eScooter. I would love the committee to talk about what's done with the emails that are gone to eScooter. I've never gotten a response. But on repeated occasions, scooters have been ridden on sidewalks, 2 people on 1 scooter on sidewalks. When the scooters go downhill, as they do from Washington Square into Coolidge Corner, they pick up speed. I don't have a speed gun, but it seems to me that they're going a lot faster than 15 miles an hour on the sidewalk, weaving in around pedestrians. The scooters have been parked on the sidewalks in curb cuts, blocking hydrants, blocking handicapped parking spaces, and blocking the button that you would push for pedestrian, to use the pedestrian light. Scooters, I have encountered scooters that have ignored pedestrian crosswalks, and I just would urge, if we're going to go forward with this, that we take a very careful and cautious look about how we're using our sidewalks. I believe sidewalks are used for pedestrians, and I would encourage, as we think about this, that we move forward to have some hearings about the proper use of sidewalks and to keep all wheeled vehicles, with the exception of wheelchairs, off of sidewalks. Thank you.
You will get an email response, Adele. I think I've seen your email.
I stopped doing it because I don't know that anything is happening with that email.
Yep. So what we had said on the website in the fact section with the e-scooter is it's a place for you to provide comment, feedback, instead of or in addition to attending this, so that we do not respond to it. If you have,
Yes.
yep. So
Yep.
what those responses will all be included in the final report, similar to transcripts for the 2 community forums.
But I personally will respond to you within the next week. So Sam Burgess?
Hi, I am also not a resident of Brookline. I live in Boston, pretty much right across the town line, and I spend a lot of my free time here. I don't own a car. I bike. I use Blue Bikes. I use the T. And ever since the scooter pilot started, every once in a while I use the scooters. I think they're a pretty cool option, especially for people who might not feel comfortable getting on a bike or who don't want to walk too far. I agree there are issues to be worked out in terms of where the scooters can be parked. I think the town is now doing some sort of e-scooter parking corral pilot as well, which is great, and I would like to see more of that. I think overall the pros of the pilot and scooters in general greatly outweigh the cons, and I think any additional low carbon, more safe alternative like scooters is one that town should be advocating for. Thanks.
Thank you very much. The next person, is John Dempsey.
Hi, I'm John Dempsey, Brington Road, Brookline resident. First of all, I want to thank you. You seem to be taking blame, but I want to thank you for experimenting with the e-scoot pilot. I think you went out there, you took a chance, and I think it's a great thing. I'm an occasional user. By occasional, I mean once, maybe twice a month. But I use it for all sorts of different things, and I find it very handy. It speeds things up. It gets me where I need to be. And though I'm usually walking, or usually on the T, or usually on the bike, and sometimes in a car, I find the convenience of the e-scooter a wonderful thing. So don't go blaming yourselves. You should take a pat on the back, in my opinion. I am a pedestrian. I find jaywalking pedestrians with headphones on really annoying, but I don't want to outlaw walking. I'm a bicyclist. I'm really annoyed when I see bicyclists on sidewalks going down the wrong way in one-way streets, but I don't want to outlaw bicyclists. I think it can be managed. I ride the T regularly. I get annoyed. I sound like a cranky old man. I get so easily annoyed. But I'm on the T, I get annoyed with people who block the doors or don't move into the car. But we don't want to outlaw the T. We all need the T. I'm a driver, and I find I get annoyed when drivers drive up onto the tree lawn, the tracks on the tree lawn, when they plow through a pedestrian crossing with pedestrians in it. That annoys me, but I don't want to outlaw cars. I find them convenient, and we need them. And I'm a scooter rider, and I get annoyed when I see scooters just left anywhere, when I see scooters on sidewalks. That annoys me when they ignore the rules that we have for riding scooters, but I don't want to outlaw scooters. So thank you very much. I would say the only problem is I would like it to be connected to Boston, Cambridge. So I think you're doing a good job.
Thank you very much. The next person is Christy Jensen.
Hi, my name is Christy Jensen. I live at 14 Perry Street. I work in micromobility as well as utilize it in my daily life. So having the scooter pilot here in Brookline has been great to see because I work with scooter programs all over the US, and being able to utilize these in my own community has helped me do my job better, but it's also helped me see how needed they are in Brookline. I am an occasional scooter user. I mostly bike and walk around Brookline. But what I notice the most isn't scooter users breaking the law, it's the amount of car users that break the law on the daily. Every day, my life is threatened, and the lives of other cyclists and scooter users who are vulnerable road users. The bike lanes are blocked by cars, and promises of the Brookline police, sorry to throw you under the bus, to stop cars from blocking the bike lanes has yet to be seen. In the area of Whole Foods, in Coolidge Corner, those bike lanes, which are major thoroughfares for cyclists and micromobility users, are always blocked by cars. And it threatens our lives when cars swerve within 3 feet of us. It's tough, and it makes you kind of not want to ride a bike, even though you know that's the best way to get around Boston. I hear people talk about, I've heard people talk about, how scooters decrease ridership of the MBTA. The T is so overburdened at this point. I don't know why you'd want to try to shove more people on the Green Line. It takes me 45 minutes to take the D line to work from Brookline Village to the Arlington T-stop. It takes me 20 minutes to bike that same distance. It also takes me 45 minutes to walk. So I would save myself $250 and have time to listen to a podcast at my leisure if I just walked instead of taking the T, which is kind of frustrating since I am a huge supporter of public transit. I have heard a lot of people complain about how that these are just for young people, and there are hordes of young folk and gangs of scooter riders. This coded language is damaging to our community to be so ageist against people who are quote-unquote young. We don't know these people's ages. Unless you've asked them, it's rude and it's inaccurate. I doubt that any person here in this room would love to be told that they're too old to ride a scooter. I think it's really important that as a community we think outside of our age group and our tax bracket in terms of what our community needs, because sometimes what we think it needs isn't 100% correct, and we need to open our minds a little bit. Keeping scooters going in Brookline just helps add to the micromobility fabric of our community and decrease car congestion. I have heard a lot of people talk about how on Kent Street people are riding scooters on the sidewalk, and I don't know if you've ever ridden a bike on Kent Street, but it's a great way to die if that's what your decision is for the day. I avoid Kent Street at all costs at this point because I've had multiple run-ins with cars that have left me feeling like if I continue to ride my bike on this road, I'm going to die. So when it comes to why scooter riders are riding on sidewalks, it isn't that they want to break the law. People are always going to ride a bike or a scooter where they feel safest. And if the city wants to do something, or the town wants to do something about it, I encourage us to look more at building better infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person is John Harris. And after that is Robina Foland.
Thank you. John Harris, co-chair of Climate Action Brookline, although speaking privately. I actually have been am a huge supporter of e-scooters done right, done with careful regulation. I've been working this issue for every meeting I've been able to attend for the last several months, and have a good sense, I think, of what the concerns are, both pro and con. Number one, I think most importantly, is that we absolutely need micromobility, and we need things like e-scooters, certainly for the climate crisis. Also, there'll be a huge solution for traffic congestion. They are a great solution for inequities of cost in transportation, because it's very inexpensive either to rent, as in scooter share, or to buy a scooter, so they're perfect for low-income people. And finally, they provide one more mobility option for the disabled. So I think micromobility and scooters are a fantastic thing if we get it right. We can, I believe, and should address every single concern that folks have raised about scooters. And if we do, we will still have a very good e-scooter share program. At one level are the things that the scooter share companies themselves, and buttressed by town regulation, can handle. And number one is that as every scooter company person, every time I've seen any of them, I've recommended that they bring in models with seats in addition to the stand-up ones. Because if they have models with seats and with a little basket or something in back so you can put your groceries or your pocketbook or whatever in, everybody except for blind people can ride them independently, even those with strength and or balance concerns. And a number of you have seen my friend who lives near the JFK school and teaches at BU, and this is how he commutes to work every day in a seated scooter. He's in his 80s, I think I said. And with seated scooters, in addition to giving access to an awful lot more people, that is a huge solution to the problem of more than one person riding on a single scooter. Because with the seat in the middle of things, it's really tough. It might be impossible to have a second person standing on there as well. Number two for the companies and town regulation is the issue of tightening up the matching of the supply to the demand, and that will do a lot to take care of the overcrowding of the parking of the vehicles on the sidewalks, et cetera, et cetera. But obviously there are market incentives why the companies have reason to get that right. And then finally, since e-scooters are different from electric vehicles, they work, electric cars, they work on regular 110 volt electricity. So what that means is virtually every place where you may find one parked, there's an electric plug very close by. So having trucks pick them up every night to charge them somewhere else is like hauling coals to Newcastle. Much more sensible to have the scooter companies contract with property owners through the town to host passive charging and parking stations, ideally maybe one on each street, and plug into their household supply. I have unused driveway space at my house, easily big enough for probably half a dozen scooters. Did you say 1 minute? Uh-oh, gotta go fast. Okay, Zipcar does that. E-scooters can do that too. State regulation very quickly can handle basically the bulk in terms of defining e-scooters, what's the maximum speed that the models can attain, issues of driver's licenses, issues of accountability, and either driver's licenses and or registration plates or numbers on each vehicle. Driver's licenses would also take care of the underage problem that some folks have mentioned. Liability and the insurance, if it's shared e-scooters, then the scooter share companies. If it's privately owned scooters, then the owners might be required, state regulation, to have insurance. Also the issues of front and rear lights, turn signals, and helmets. Pedestrians absolutely should be and should feel safe on the sidewalk. But it's immoral to simply transfer that danger to others. So I recommend, this is my conclusion, that advocates for pedestrians, seniors, school kids, and the disabled work closely with environmentalists, Complete Streets, Vision Zero, bicycle and micromobility advocates to create separated and protected bike or micromobility lanes on the major thoroughfares in Brookline. Complete Streets means that everyone should feel and be safe on our roads and our sidewalks, particularly vulnerable users And that includes pedestrians, seniors, kids, the disabled, and riders of bicycles, scooters, and other micromodes. If we work together, we can get this done.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
So Ravina, and then after that, Hugh Madison. We'll try to get through all of the people who have signed up, and then we'll open it up to anyone who is inspired to come to the mic.
Good evening. I'm Rabina Foland, and I live at 9 Perry Street in Brookline Village. Excuse me. And I have seen probably 4 to 5 dozen e-scooters. I've almost been hit by them doing errands twice. Of all the 4 to 5 dozen of these that I've seen, I've only seen 14 people actually wearing helmets, which I think is a real problem. I've also seen 3 instances of 2 people in tandem riding the same scooter, including down the one-way block of my street. And when we called out and said, "Excuse me, but you're going the wrong way," the response is, "Oh, we're a scooter." So there seems to be a lack of understanding that they're really subject to the same rules of the road as bicycles and cars are. You've seen them left all over town. One of my mobility impaired colleagues had to physically get out of her car. There was an e-scooter parked in the middle of her driveway. She had to get out of her car and move the e-scooter before she could pull into her own driveway on Lee Street. And with her lack of mobility, that was really a huge problem. We all support our efforts to combat climate change. And I'm a lifelong public transit user and walker. And I acknowledge that, yes, the T still has problems and has never fully recovered from the winter of 2015. However, a lot of institutions around town do provide shuttle bus service. Harvard, Boston University, MIT, Boston Medical Center, Brigham and Women's, Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, Partners Healthcare, all provide shuttle bus service for their employees, for patients, and for visitors. And that's another way to get around and another way to also support climate change. If anybody actually reads The Economist or the New York Times, e-scooters have become a huge problem in cities in Europe. In Paris, they're clogging up the entire city. I have a neighbor who recently returned from a trip to Paris, and her attempt to walk along the Seine and look at the sights, she spent all of her time avoiding the e-scooters that were clogging away and trying to avoid being hit by them. So unfortunately, as the program is currently structured, I'm not a firm advocate for it. But in addition to the climate crisis, there's also an obesity crisis in our culture, and walking is a great way to help keep your weight down, which is one reason that I do it. But thank you for your time, and I appreciate the opportunity to share my feedback.
Thank you very much. Hugh?
Thank you for having this hearing. I think it will be very useful. My name is Hugh Madison. I live on Pond Avenue, and I am a town meeting member from Precinct 5. I bought a Razor scooter. It's just, top speed is about 18 miles an hour, and I rode it here tonight, as a matter of fact. I don't ride it that much, but it's handy when I do. I want to make the point that a seated scooter, I think, would appeal to a much wider audience. An example of that, there have been a couple of demo days along Beacon Street, and I also went over to the senior center, and I got about 8 seniors to ride it. There's no lane, so they rode it on the sidewalk, but they actually rode it, and they seem to do fine with it. And so I think that's a population that needs to be served, and I would encourage any new pilot program to include have the requirement that there be seated scooters available too. They're much more easily handled in traffic, and it's much less tiring, and you can go longer distances as long as your battery holds out. I will say, I asked the town, and they did. They installed electric receptacles, something John Harris mentioned. Electric receptacles downstairs at the bike rack, and I'm trying it out for the first time. I got mine plugged in now, so I'll have power to get home. Anyway, I would like to see a pilot program continue next year, whether or not the state has done its work, because this is too important a project to let die just because the state doesn't move quickly. So I would encourage that to start up again in March. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugh. So Bill Schechter. And then after that is Justin Britton?
Bill Schechter, Brook Street. I'm not even a member of the Dempsey family. I don't want Chris to feel badly. And also, I don't really oppose scooters. I think I felt more strongly about that before. But I do feel strongly that the use of scooters need to be bounded by certain rules that get enforced, and that there be accountability. Same kind of accountability I have in Brookline when I park at an overdue meter and I get a ticket. The rules you come up with should be reasonable and enforceable. For example, helmets. I would say about 80% of the people are not using helmets. And maybe that's not a fight you want to have. Because it would take the Brookline police, they would have to stop doing everything else to enforce that rule. So make it voluntary, or if it's a rule, actually enforce it. No doubling up. I saw two parents on the Muddy River with their kids doubled up between them on a third scooter, no helmets. Sidewalks. Yes, we all use sidewalks, but we pedestrians have been around for about 100,000 years before scooters. And if there is a particularly dangerous road, post it. Scooters allowed on this sidewalk to accommodate them. We don't want anybody hurt. The biggest problem for me, as a lover of our parks, is the just scattering of scooters in the Muddy River Park. This morning I was coming up from the Muddy River on the staircase up to Longwood, and there in front of me, not on the bridge, but going toward Coolidge Corner, were 10 scooters just scattered. Half of them fallen over, one in somebody's walkway, another one on a lawn. There has to be some accountability. I think if you can bound this with rules that can reconcile competing interests, that will win acceptance from this community. And there has to be some consequence. It can't just be a mindset of, I'm finished with, scooter brought me here, I'm finished with it now, so it's not my problem anymore. That becomes a quality of life issue, particularly in our parks. Can we create some scooter corrals? Is that or storage areas? For example, the Muddy River. And all you'd need is a bucket of paint. One by the water department, one by Longwood Station, one by the Landmark Center on that end. Give people a place to park these things. No one will have to walk more than a minute in order to access a scooter. I don't think that's a big inconvenience. Olmsted created a pretty beautiful park. Lastly, please research what other cities have done to civilize scooter culture, if you will. Paris, Copenhagen, Austin, all these cities have dealt with this, and they've come up, I think, with some good solutions. So I'm saying yes to scooters, but let's have some rules. Okay.
Thank you. So Justin? Britton? No? Mayim Barn? Oh. How'd I do on the name?
Barron. Mayim Barron. I live at the wonderful
that's an O.
communities in Brookline, right in the heart of Coolidge Corner. And I don't have much to add to the excellent comments that have been made. Thank you so much for hearing them. I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, you guys have so much work and you're requested to do so much more. But I do think this is a great program. I was really excited to have it come to Brookline. I participated in the great training that Lime Scooters offers. I think they've had a great training program, and they're very conscientious about trying to get people to follow the rules. Every time you sign in, you have to say you agree that you'll wear a helmet and you're over 18. But I just want to be here as another elder. I'm actually almost 70, and when I tell the people in my residence, oh, I've been running a scooter today, they go, really, scooter? Like, I I felt unsafe on my bike. I don't know why. I feel safer on the scooters. That's not logical. But the scooters offer me a really good alternative. They're quick and easy to use. They're very efficient. I love the fact that they don't have any emissions. They're electric. They're ecologically friendly. I'm also involved in Climate Action Brookline and Elders Climate Action, so I'm very concerned about those issues. I think they're a great alternative for us, and the seniors are using them too, or can, and they're wonderful. So thank you.
Thank you. Rachel Silverman?
Hi, I'm Rachel Silverman, and I'm on Longwood Ave, and I think I'm probably that driveway that you saw coming out of the muddy river with all the scooters flopped around, because we are right as you're entering Boston, so people like to leave their scooters on our lawn, which I actually don't care that much about. What I care about is that when they pick up their scooter coming back into Brookline, they are going the wrong way down the street. So when I'm pulling out of my driveway, I'm trying not to hit pedestrians, drivers, and now scooters coming in two different directions. And no, it is the rare scooter driver that you see wearing a helmet. So I worry all the time that I am going to be the cause of someone's demise. And there's clearly no sense of rules. If there's rules, they don't count because they're not being enforced. So I feel like I'm carrying a lot of weight that besides having these scooters all over the place just laying around, that people are just are all over the road. The other drivers are trying to go around them, which is also causing chaos for the bikers. And Longwood Ave is already a congested and difficult place, and I think that they're adding to the safety concerns that I see. Thank you.
Thank you. Ruth Ann.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Ruth Ann Snyder. I'm a town meeting member in Precinct 6, and I'm temporarily a disabled person, so I'm getting a really good look at our streets and sidewalks. And I'm terribly concerned that we have really damaged roads. I could take pictures just in my neighborhood of seriously damaged roads. So the conversation that I've been having with other town meeting members has to do with the risk factor. And I don't know the details of it specifically, but what I'm very concerned about is that the roads get fixed. And so I've decided it would be very fair for the owner. I like these scooters too. I think they're a good idea. That the companies, in addition to paying a fee for each scooter that they have on the road, that an annual percentage of their profit, which should be figured out backwards from what our road building needs are, should be taken from them perpetually. They're going to be on the roads forever. They're going to be companies forever. We should take their money annually, a percentage, you'll decide what it is, to fix our roads, to keep our roads fixed. They're going to be riding on them. They're going to be deteriorating them. They're using them. We have a responsibility to give everybody a safe road, a safe experience. I don't want to pick up someone from the street and worry about what's happened to them. I don't think the companies want that either. So fixing the roads first, and I'm glad to talk to Todd later about how we could inventory the town and really determine what are the bad ones. We could grade them just like the gas company grades their holes, and figure out which ones that they have to be repaired before these programs go into practice. But it's a good program, and I think I hope it goes forward with your guided regulation.
Thank you. Denise Spring.
Denise Springborg. I live on St. Mary's Street. I could go on and on and on about all the concerns with breaking rules, but we don't have rules. So I think it's incredibly prudent that before continuing any kind of share program, that we have rules in place, because my neighbors, myself, everyone has been affected by the fact we don't have cars, we walk everywhere, and now we can't walk on Longwood Mall. We can't walk down Beacon Street without having somebody coming at us on a scooter. So I'll leave it at that for that. And then I went to one of the warrant hearings, and I heard a lot about how the town is collecting data from the scooter company. And I think we need to be really careful about relying on the scooter company for influencing the decisions that we make. Specifically, I heard on a CBS Sunday morning show, so this is CBS reporting, that Bird has opposed legislation for requiring helmets. So they've actually stopped it from happening in other locations. So we really need to think about the interest of these companies is to make money. So let's just make sure that it's right for us and not for them.
Thank you. Next is Worth Smith. Did I get that right? Yes. Okay. And then after that is David Krupp, and those are the only speakers who have signed up. So if you want to make your way towards the mic for anyone who still wishes to speak, we'll take you as you approach the mic. Worth.
Hi, I'm Worth Smith. Didn't know that I was on the speaking list, but I do have some comments to make. I think I currently work in the micromobility space, and I've come into Brookline a number of times to ride scooters, check out the different companies. One thing I've noticed, because I'm in the space, is that the scooters in Brookline are not often the latest generation that the companies offer. So if you follow the big scooter sharing companies, Lime and Bird and Spin, you'll see that they put out press releases with newer generation vehicles that have better safety features and things like that that are more roadworthy based on kind of what they've learned from running these businesses over the last 2 years. I would suggest in the next pilot requiring the companies to have their latest generation vehicles, just because they're considerably safer. And if you go and look at some of the newer markets, particularly in Europe, there's a lot more regulation around the hardware and how safe the vehicles are. I mean, you all have seen them on the street. Some of them look pretty beat up, pretty dinky. The latest generation ones are much better, and so I would suggest that you require the companies to have those here, because we don't want to get the used ones or the old ones.
Hand-me-downs.
The hand-me-downs, yes. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Very interesting feedback that I have not received.
Hello, my name is David Krupp. I live on Osborne Road. Thank you first for holding the pilot. I think it was really useful, and I think we learned a lot. And I think one thing is very clear. It is clearly a mobility solution for a large group of people. I don't use scooters at all, but I think the more people who have a chance to get around in a very low impact, low cost way, the better. My main comments really relate to how do we test whether this pilot is successful, what's the standard. And my main point there is simply I feel we should have a level playing field for all different forms of transportation. And I would really ask people, are the scooters really worse than motor vehicles in Brookline? And I think many people would be surprised to learn that in Brookline, a pedestrian is struck by a motor vehicle every week. And every 2 times a month, a pedestrian is injured by being struck by a motor vehicle. And those statistics also apply for people on bicycle. And the difference to me between the scooters and the motor vehicles is I think there will be solutions to make the scooters work and to not have a lot of these bad behaviors, which I certainly don't support, and I certainly don't think people should have to worry while they're walking on the sidewalk about a scooter. The scooter should be properly parked. But, frankly, I don't know what solution there is to deal with the fact that motorists basically drive 10 miles an hour over the speed limits through our city, our town. The 25-mile-an-hour speed limit is basically unenforceable. And a lot of the comments just to me reflect a failure to really recognize the impact that the motor vehicle has. I mean, consider 6.2% of motorists driving in Massachusetts don't even have insurance. That's why you buy uninsured motorist insurance when you drive, because of a concern that you could be injured by an uninsured motorist. 14% don't use seatbelts, and yet we're hyper-focused on the helmets, the lack of insurance for a vehicle that really is fairly low risk. And I really hope that we'll be able to migrate more people to using transportation options like the scooter. And I think we can work to solve a lot of the problems. I'm much more optimistic about solving the scooter problems than I am about solving the motor vehicle problems.
Thank you very much. And I must correct myself. We have one more person who signed up, and that is Kim Smith. Before we, do you want to speak? Okay. If you're going to speak, come up to the mic, please.
I have the distinction, unfortunately, of being the poster child for what can go wrong. Having had an injury during the scooter launch in Brookline on April Fool's Day of all days. And I'm just concerned about the safety issues, and I was using a Bird scooter, and all I was told was scoot, 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 hop on. Or, I'm sorry, stop, go, scoot, 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 hop on, and had no information about how to break the darn thing. And went to press the stop button, nothing happens, press it again, and was thrown forward. And so I see that the Birds now have a brake on the handlebar, and I was appalled to see the new company that didn't have a brake on the handlebar. And I think that's, to me, feels like something that I wish I had had on the scooter that I was riding. But I met a woman who's with the Spin, or whatever the new company's name is, and assured me that will be fixed in the future. I don't drive and take public transportation and walk, and I appreciate the interest in alternative forms of transportation. It's not clear to me how many people are at this point are using them as alternative to cars, and I'm wondering if it's alternatives to public transportation or to walking. And the people that I've seen on them appear to be joyriding, which is okay, but again, it's not clear to me that they're being used as alternatives to other forms of transportation. And I want to echo the other woman's concerns about relying on data. It's supplied by the billion-dollar companies that operate these scooters. And again, I don't think that they're taking the safety issues seriously enough. I was wearing a helmet and was still injured. So, thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Okay, now we're going to open it up to those who want to speak that did not sign up.
Hi, I feel like I know you, so
Hi, Cindy.
Yeah. My name is Cindy Lee. I'm a resident on Babcock Street. I am a member of the Transportation Board, but I'm actually speaking on my own behalf as a resident. I think I made some notes, and they may sound out of order. I think that there's an underlying issue of sidewalk safety. I also think there's an underlying issue of making it safe for the e-scooter rider by helmets, etc. I think that, and this is whether or not we go ahead or not, the possibility of having license plate numbers or something on the scooter, so that if a user is leaving it consistently in the middle of a crosswalk, then perhaps the company themselves can find that individual. It's because I'm sure that when they rent a scooter, it says not to, don't block the sidewalk, wear a helmet, be 18 plus, etc. I think those are just some things to think about should a contract or talking with the company moves forward at that point. Lastly, you had mentioned that you're doing the survey that was rolling out. I don't know if you're going to, I want to ask you now, but I don't know if you're going to talk about it later. So if you can.
No, please ask.
Okay. How is that being done? Like, are you mailing it out? How are people being notified regarding a survey?
Let me stop this so that it doesn't go against your time. John?
Sure. So there are direct links posted on the town website that will take you to it. We'll push it out via the town social media. The staff at the Council on Aging /trips/BCAN will be pushing it out via email to all of everyone on their email list as well. The scooter companies will be sending it out to their users, and we'll be putting it. We'll be notifying the tab, patch, etc. about it as well.
And hard copies will be available in the Department of Transportation here.
So it'll be in the tab and stuff, because I think that has to be sent all over.
Yes. We will try to publicize using what little resources we have. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, that was it? Okay. Great. Thank you.
Hello. I'm Douglas Plant. I'm at 103 Walnut Street. I was just sort of scrolling my notes, so I apologize in advance if I'm repeating anything. I am a pedestrian. I've never driven. For medical reasons, I've depended on public transit my whole life. I am a scooter owner. I always wear a helmet. I can see both sides, certainly. A lot of my points about the pros and cons are things that have already been stated. I thought that perhaps I could share a few things as a user that might be helpful. I can say that in order to keep costs down, certainly the models that the companies that are part of the pilot program have been using are not necessarily the cutting edge. They may be perfectly acceptable in terms of safety, but there are a few points that I did want to raise. For example, most of them, I believe, are the solid tire models as opposed to the air-filled tire models, which are more expensive. And that provides for a much less comfortable ride, especially on cracks and sidewalks. That's been my experience. When I was picking a model for myself, that was certainly a deciding factor. So I don't know if that directly contributes to safety issues, but certainly the models that we have are not the most comfortable ride. Another point that I wanted to state is that the extended battery packs that are on these models to allow them to run throughout the entire day certainly make them heavier. And although it provides better range, when a model is left, when a unit is left in the middle of the sidewalk or perhaps in the way of a person who's trying to get down the walkway on a wheelchair or a person who's disabled, it's all the more heavier for them to have to lift out of the way. My son, who's in the audience, has taken it upon himself to collect these scooters and ship them out of the way of the sidewalks, because we do have some people on our street who are disabled and who have to rely on that width of the sidewalk for wheelchair access. So I've been proud of him for that. Certainly I do see the benefits to this, again, as a non-driver. But I do think that the model that we have does create a problem in terms of where these are left. And I noticed that at the height of the pilot program, certainly we had a forest of scooters at the intersection of Washington and High Street. On any given day in the morning, they were neatly laid out, but you could barely move in that little, that intersection area because of the sheer number that had been placed out. So my concern, and I'd like to ask you this, and the information may already be on the website available. My primary concern, I see the benefits, I see the drawbacks of the program, but my main concern is if the pilot were to be judged a success, what regulations are already in place, or what regulations could we expect to be put in place to manage the inventory? Because as far as I can tell, the primary way, based on the model by which you locate the scooters and find them, the primary way that these companies are going to succeed in competing against each other is through inventory. The more scooters they can effectively put in your way so that they're convenient, the more successful they will be. So is that something you could address, or is there information on the website about that?
Well, I will just respond that we started in what I view as conservative, about 100 scooters per company. We had 2 companies to start. We now have a third. We are at about 400 scooters.
Yeah, so we allowed them to raise it based on their utilization per scooter. So if they were averaging more than 3 rides per scooter per day deployed, then we would allow them to move it up in increments of 25. And we reviewed that on a weekly basis, or with some companies monthly basis. And we only increased it if they asked, and we're at that level. Lime is at 200 right now. Bird is at 125, I believe, and Spin is at 100. However, they're not all deploying the amount that they're allowed to deploy.
And I think your point is well taken. We have looked at other cities and towns that have permitted these devices throughout the country, and the success stories started with smaller numbers of operators and smaller numbers of total scooters. Austin, for example, permitted 13 companies, and I don't believe had a cap about how many scooters got deployed. And they've had a number of issues that they've had to address.
Thank you very much. May I ask one follow-up question?
Of course.
You've addressed the number of companies, which would be my primary concern, because again, to me the issue is the competition, and the model seems to encourage flooding with inventory to increase the number of rides per company. But my other question, you mentioned that the number of companies and also the utilization of the scooters. As part of that calculus, are you taking into account the length of individual rides? Because it seems to me that part of the sort of model for this is that, there's a scooter. I will use this to drive 100 yards down the road because it's only $1. Is that part of the calculation? Are you looking at just the number of rides per scooter per day, or are you also looking at, is it being utilized for a full commute, or just to go 50 feet down the road or 200 feet down the road?
We're not looking at the distance at this time. You have to remember that 2 of the 3 companies have their scooters confined to just within Brookline, which is 6 square miles. Despite that, the average ride is 1.1 miles. So they're not being used for 100 yards or 50 feet. They are actually being used for longer trips.
And both Todd and I sit on the Metropolitan Area Planning Council task force with Cambridge, Somerville, the city of Boston, now Watertown, and we represent Brookline. And I can tell you that from a regional perspective, we are looking at tripling.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'm satisfied, and I appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
David Gladstone, Precinct 16. I'm also Senior Vice President of the Brookline Chamber. I'm on the Select Board for Climate Action, and I'm a Chair of the Ad Hoc Committee in Brookline. Climate is everyone's business. First of all, I appreciate and want to applaud your leadership that you guys have taken with regards to going after this issue. I know pieces of it are very uncomfortable because some people are happy, some people aren't happy. And one point in particular, I work in Brookline. I cover all the different regions in Brookline, and I'm out on the street probably 95% of my job. I do see the police department aggressively enforcing bike lanes. I see them aggressively enforcing cars that are parked in breakdown lanes. I see them ticketing. So I see an enforcement happening. I just want to say thank you for what you guys are doing. Thank you. From the standpoint of the scooters, as a businessman, I think there's a place for them. I think there's a couple things that we're going to need to bring back, and it's going to be part of the company's responsibilities and all of our responsibilities. Number one is education, and the other piece is enforcement. Sidewalks are not a place for scooters. The streets are where the scooters need to be. We need to enforce to that. We need to educate to that. The other thing is that right now, if you look at all the scooters in Brookline, none of them are identified. There's no numbers on them. So if for some reason I see someone operating erratically, going up the wrong street, as some people have said, you can actually report that if there's a number on it. You say, hey, at 120, scooter number 8 on Beacon Street was driving erratically. And then there should be some follow-up by the company to ensure that we're trying to correct that bad behavior. But really what it comes down to is education and enforcement, and that there are places for this. And from the standpoint of statistics, being on the Select Board for Climate Action and other things, there are a lot of great stats coming out right now of how much people are riding them, where they're riding them, how long. And we're able to make calculations on if they were cars, if they weren't like walking, if they were using something with oil or gas, that it creates a carbon footprint. We can sort of calculate, as a result of all these scooters making these trips, how much of the carbon footprint is being saved as a result of us diminishing carbon output by people using these scooters. So it comes down to responsibility, education, and enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jules Milner-Bragi, a resident of Rawson Road and Aspinall Hill, and a town meeting member for Precinct 12, although speaking for myself. I want to thank you for the opportunity to comment and appreciate your hosting these public information sessions. I first want to say that I appreciate Brookline's undertaking pilots, both of street improvements and transportation improvements, whether it was the bridge shuttle system in a previous time, but also the scooters now. I do think that it's really valuable to have the opportunity to build community experience in the field, not just in town hall. Sometimes there are things that can be difficult to understand when talking about a diagram on screen or a written document that can be better appreciated on the street. And I think that some of the challenges and the benefits of electric shared scooters have been shown, viewed through that means of community engagement in the field. So I hope that as the town processes this information, that one of the things we take away is that it is possible to do trials and pilots, and that hopefully we'll do more, and that we will learn from this in refining our approach, but that we will continue them. One of the things that I feel that the scooters demonstrate is that there is a tremendous breadth of transportation that is faster than walking and slow wheelchair travel, and slower than high-speed car travel. And this has existed for most of human history, for example, in the form of horseback riding. But in the last 100 to 130 years, we've almost completely squeezed it out of our cities in our headlong rush to accommodate high-volume, high-speed car travel to the exclusion of alternatives. So I think some of the challenges we have with scooters and the degree to which folks feel uncomfortable riding them in the street and desire riding them on the sidewalks is a function of how much potential there is for improvement and how far we've gone in squeezing out these other modes of transportation. I do strongly agree with the other speakers who have commented on the importance of reserving sidewalks as a place that's most appropriate for walking, for slow wheelchair travel, for standing, for sitting. And so while I believe there was more sidewalk riding earlier in the pilot, it does seem like there's been some improvement in compliance, but my anecdotal observations have limitations. I only see what I actually look at. One thing I wanted to say is that I appreciate the addition of the scooter corrals in high traffic locations. I think that's a really good adaptation. I wish that perhaps it had been possible for it to have happened a little earlier in the pilot so we could have gotten more experience with it. But I do think that in these areas with really high foot traffic, really traffic of all kinds in our business districts, that holds a lot of potential, just like the bike corrals have enabled daylighting of intersections and some improved, more consolidated bike parking in the past. Really, I think that the biggest thing that the scooters demonstrate is the potential, but also the limitations of our existing accommodation in the street. And I think more traffic calming on side streets, more protected facilities on main streets, which may have some synergy with dedicated bus facilities, are things that I hope the town will investigate as a consequence of the scooter trial. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to add their, please come up to the mic. No worries. Take your time.
So I heard reference to scooter corrals in high traffic areas, and I'm just wondering where those are because I have not seen them. So
yes, because they're digital and therefore sometimes you can't see. So what they are is, so as a scooter user, you would download an app, and when you go to look for a scooter, it looks like a map, and there are all these like little pins, and you can unlock it, and then you use the QR code to unlock it. When you get done and park, if you're in a high traffic zone where we have corrals, it basically guides you to where we want you to park, and it only allows you to end the ride once you're within that zone. And we do have
So
some
the-
signage.
Yeah, so there's approximately 30 of them in Brookline Village, Coolidge Corner, and JFK Crossing. They are primarily in a parking space or on a wide curb extension in areas where they do not block access. However, there has been some problems with motorists removing the signs, parking there. The police are trying their best to combat that, and we go out, and when we find out the signs were down, we go out and we put up another 30 fresh signs. Yeah, so what we did is in those that are parking spaces, as well as to show the areas on the curb extension where we want you, we did have a stencil. It says e-scooter parking.
And that was based on feedback that we collected from a meeting like this back in June.
Hi, so I'm a graduate student at MIT, and I was actually very interested in improving and learning more about micromobility safety.
What is your name?
Sorry, Winter Guerra. I was wondering, I had a couple of questions. One being that, is the Brookline safety data publicly accessible? Another one being, are citizen safety concerns publicly accessible? And if not, is there some sort of a point of contact that I can use for my research?
The point of contact is Todd. He is the manager of the e-scooter at brooklinema.gov email address.
So the safety data actually comes from the police department. So I can, if you send me the email, I can route you to the correct personnel.
Okay. My email address?
You should be. You can speak to me afterwards. I'll give you my email.
Okay.
You can send me the request, and I'll send it to them.
Okay, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to speak? Len, come on up.
Hello, my name is Len Woolley. I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 11. For me, scooters are a minor convenience. They help me get to my children's daycare a little bit faster than if I'm walking on the sidewalk. With that said, I don't have a need for the scooters. I find them enjoyable. I think that people who ride the scooters would be more willing to ride on the streets if they felt safe on them. I have seen people riding scooters on sidewalks, and it's disappointing. But speaking of safety data, Lieutenant Philip Harrington provided me with crash data in the town of Brookline. And for the last 5 years, for each year, there's about 50 motor vehicle versus pedestrian crashes. About half of those result in injury. There are similar numbers for motor vehicle versus cyclist. Of the data that I saw, there were 2 accidents involving scooters. Both of those were with motor vehicles. So I think if we focused more on providing safe streets for all users, we could address a significant issue with the scooters. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other comments, I might actually adjourn. Okay, feel free to come up to us afterwards. Thank you very much for coming out.
Thank you.